Wait, is Dawn Staley really building the next South Carolina super team? Or could something even bigger be happening behind the scenes? Because while fans are buzzing about a highly talented four-star guard out of New York reportedly being on South Carolina's radar, an entirely different conversation is suddenly taking over social media. And trust me, nobody saw this coming. Some fans believe this recruiting move could be another sign that Dawn Staley is preparing for a dominant future in Columbia. But others are asking a much more shocking question. Could one of the biggest names in women's basketball eventually make the jump to the NBA? Now let's be clear. Nothing is confirmed. There have been no official announcements suggesting Dawn Staley is leaving South Carolina. But that hasn't stopped social media from exploding with theories, hot takes, and wild speculation. Because when you're talking about a coach who transformed South Carolina into a powerhouse, won national championships, developed elite talent, and became one of the most respected figures in basketball, people naturally start wondering what challenge comes next. Meanwhile, the recruiting trail isn't slowing down. Unconfirmed reports suggest South Carolina remains heavily interested in one of New York's rising stars, and if that recruitment ends with a commitment, it could send another message to the rest of the country. The Gamecocks aren't going anywhere. But here's where the story gets interesting. What if South Carolina lands another elite prospect, while rumors about Dawn Staley's future continue to grow? What happens if NBA organizations start looking for leadership, culture building, and proven winners? Again, nothing is confirmed. But fans believe we're watching the beginning of a storyline that could completely reshape women's basketball and potentially impact the basketball world far beyond the college game. And if that's true, the next few months could be absolutely massive. The reason this conversation has suddenly exploded isn't because of an official announcement. It isn't because Dawn Staley stood at a podium and revealed some shocking plan. In fact, nothing has been confirmed at all. But sometimes in sports, the loudest stories begin with a simple question. And right now, that question is impossible to ignore. What exactly is happening at South Carolina? Over the past several years, Dawn Staley has built something that most programs can only dream about. Winning became the expectation. Elite recruits became the norm. National attention followed every move. And because of that success, every recruiting battle now feels bigger than it used to. That's why fans immediately started paying attention when reports connected South Carolina to a highly regarded four-star guard from New York. On the surface, it looks like another major recruiting pursuit. Another talented player considering one of the most powerful programs in women's basketball. But social media rarely stays focused on the surface. Within hours, the discussion started moving in a completely different direction. Some fans began asking whether South Carolina's continued recruiting dominance was proof that Dawn Staley planned to stay for years to come. Others weren't so sure. They pointed to her growing influence across the basketball world. They pointed to her leadership reputation. They pointed to the respect she receives from players, coaches, executives, and media members alike. And then the NBA speculation started showing up again. Now once again, nothing is confirmed. There have been no official reports saying Dawn Staley is heading to the NBA. But that hasn't stopped people from debating the possibility online. Because when a coach consistently wins, develops talent, manages pressure, and commands respect, people naturally wonder whether bigger opportunities could emerge. And that's where this story becomes fascinating. At the same moment South Carolina appears focused on adding another talented young player, fans are simultaneously discussing a future that could look completely different from what anyone expected. Imagine being a recruit watching all of this unfold. You're seeing one of the most successful coaches in basketball continue to attract elite talent. You're seeing championship expectations every single season. You're seeing sold-out arenas, national television exposure, and a program that has become one of the biggest brands in the sport. At the same time, you're seeing endless speculation about what the future might hold. Would a potential recruit view that as uncertainty? Or would they view it as proof that they're being recruited by one of the most influential figures in basketball? The reactions have been split right down the middle. Some people think the NBA discussion is being overblown by social media. They believe Dawn Staley remains fully committed to South Carolina, and that her recruiting efforts prove exactly that. Their argument is simple. If a coach is aggressively pursuing top prospects, building future rosters, and laying foundations years ahead, why would they be preparing to leave? Others see it differently. They believe great coaches eventually attract opportunities that are impossible to predict. They point out that sports history is filled with moments nobody expected until they suddenly happened. A coach signs a contract extension and leaves months later. A player declares loyalty and requests a trade weeks afterward. Sports can change overnight. And because of that unpredictability, every rumor starts gaining momentum. The recruiting angle only adds more fuel to the conversation. If South Carolina lands this highly regarded guard from New York, fans believe it would send another powerful message across the country. It would reinforce the idea that the Gamecocks remain a destination program, regardless of outside noise. But if the speculation around Dawn Staley continues growing, every future recruiting victory could create even more questions, not fewer. That's what makes this situation so unique. Usually recruiting stories stay recruiting stories. Usually coaching rumors stay coaching rumors. This time, the two conversations are colliding at exactly the same moment. One storyline is about the future of South Carolina basketball. The other is about the future of one of the sport's most influential leaders. And right now, nobody truly knows where either story ends. What we do know is that fans are watching every move, every recruiting visit, every social media post, every interview, every public appearance. Because in today's sports world, perception can become a headline within minutes. And whether the speculation turns out to be completely wrong or surprisingly accurate, one thing is already clear. The attention surrounding South Carolina has reached another level. The recruiting battle is heating up. The rumors are getting louder. The theories keep spreading. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise sits a question that refuses to disappear. Is this simply another chapter in South Carolina's recruiting dominance? Or are fans witnessing the early stages of a much bigger basketball story that nobody saw coming? That question is exactly why this recruiting battle suddenly feels much bigger than recruiting. Because when people look at South Carolina today, they are not just looking at a college basketball program. They are looking at a machine that has consistently produced results, championships, elite players, national attention, and perhaps most importantly, stability. That stability starts with Dawn Staley. For years, recruits have known exactly what South Carolina represents: toughness, discipline, development, a chance to compete for championships from the moment they arrive on campus. That reputation is one of the biggest reasons every recruiting target connected to South Carolina immediately becomes a national story. The New York guard now being linked to the Gamecocks is no exception. According to recruiting discussions circulating online, she is viewed as one of the more promising young guards in her class. Multiple programs are reportedly showing interest. Nothing is finalized, and no commitment has been announced. But fans believe South Carolina's involvement instantly changes the conversation. Why? Because South Carolina rarely enters a recruiting race without serious intentions. That is what has people paying attention. The timing is also impossible to ignore. As recruiting news continues to emerge, the conversation surrounding Dawn Staley's future refuses to disappear. Once again, there is no confirmation that she is pursuing NBA opportunities. No official statements suggest a departure is coming, but fans continue connecting dots. Some people believe that if an NBA franchise ever wanted a proven culture builder, Dawn Staley would immediately become a candidate worth discussing. Others argue that her impact at South Carolina is already so significant that leaving would make little sense. That disagreement has created two completely different visions of the future. The first vision is simple. South Carolina keeps stacking elite recruiting classes. The New York guard eventually joins the program. More top prospects follow. The Gamecocks remain national championship contenders year after year. Dawn Staley continues strengthening one of the most successful dynasties in women's college basketball. For many fans, that scenario feels realistic because it matches everything they have watched over the past several years. Then there is the second vision. The one generating all the headlines. The one generating all the debates. The one filling comment sections across social media. What happens if opportunities outside of college basketball eventually become impossible to ignore? Again, this is speculation, nothing more. But speculation drives sports conversations every single day. And right now, people are asking questions because of Staley's growing influence throughout basketball. Her voice carries weight. Players respect her. Coaches respect her. Executives respect her. That level of influence naturally creates curiosity about what might happen next. Meanwhile, South Carolina appears focused on something much more immediate: winning recruiting battles. That is where the story becomes particularly interesting. Programs often reveal their confidence through recruiting. If coaches believe uncertainty is ahead, recruiting can become more difficult. Questions emerge. Competitors attack weaknesses. Rival schools use rumors against you. But when a program continues aggressively pursuing elite talent, it often sends a completely different message. A message of confidence. A message of long-term planning. A message that the people inside the building are not operating with panic. That is why many fans see South Carolina's reported pursuit of another highly rated guard as significant. Not because one recruit changes everything, but because it reflects the program's mindset. South Carolina appears to be acting like a team preparing for the future, not worrying about it. And that brings us to another important point. The pressure surrounding this recruitment has quietly increased. The moment social media connected this prospect to South Carolina, expectations changed. Now fans are monitoring every update, every unofficial visit, every photograph, every recruiting rumor, every social media interaction. In today's sports landscape, even the smallest detail can become a major talking point. A player follows a coach online. Fans react. A photo surfaces from a visit. Fans react. A cryptic message gets posted. Fans react. Whether those reactions mean anything is another question entirely, but they create momentum. And momentum creates narratives. Right now, the narrative surrounding South Carolina is fascinating because two stories are developing at the same time. One story involves the future of a talented young guard deciding where she wants to play college basketball. The other involves ongoing speculation about one of the sport's most powerful figures. Those stories may have absolutely nothing to do with each other, yet fans continue connecting them. That is why every development feels bigger than it normally would. And that is why this recruitment has become one of the most closely watched situations among South Carolina supporters. Because if the Gamecocks secure another major commitment, many fans will see it as proof that the program remains exactly where it has been for years, at the top. But until decisions are made, questions will continue. The recruiting race remains open. The speculation remains active. The debates remain heated. And while nobody can say with certainty what happens next, one reality is becoming impossible to ignore. South Carolina is once again sitting at the center of one of the most talked about storylines in basketball. Whether the headlines end with a major commitment, the end of the rumors, or an unexpected twist that nobody predicts, the spotlight is not leaving Columbia anytime soon. In fact, if social media is right about one thing, the biggest development in this story may still be waiting around the corner. The reason many fans believe a major development could be approaching has less to do with rumors and more to do with timing. In college basketball, timing often tells a story before official announcements do. Programs are already evaluating future roster needs. Recruits are narrowing options. Coaches are building relationships that could shape the next several years. And right in the middle of that process sits South Carolina. The Gamecocks are no longer chasing relevance. They are protecting a standard. That distinction matters. When a program reaches the top, every decision becomes more important because expectations never disappear. Fans do not simply want competitive teams anymore. They expect championships. They expect Final Four appearances. They expect elite recruiting classes. Anything less immediately becomes a national conversation. That pressure is one reason Dawn Staley has earned so much respect across basketball. Building a winner is difficult. Staying a winner is even harder. Yet year after year, South Carolina continues finding ways to reload. Not rebuild. Reload. That is exactly why this New York recruiting target has attracted so much attention. Many fans see her as more than just another prospect. They see her as a symbol of what comes next. A potential piece of South Carolina's future. And according to conversations circulating online, that future could be incredibly important because the landscape of women's basketball is changing faster than ever before. The competition is stronger. The national exposure is larger. The recruiting battles are more intense. Every major program is fighting for elite talent. Schools know that one recruiting class can change everything. That reality has created enormous interest in every move South Carolina makes. But there is another factor making this story even bigger: legacy. Because whether people realize it or not, much of this conversation revolves around Dawn Staley's legacy. Think about it. When fans discuss potential NBA opportunities, they are not really debating whether she is successful enough. Most people already agree she is. Instead, they are debating what challenge remains. Some people think South Carolina is the perfect place for her to continue building an historic career. Others believe competitors at the highest levels of basketball could eventually come calling. Again, nothing is confirmed. No official reports have suggested a move is imminent. But social media continues asking the question because successful people often attract unexpected opportunities. And that brings us back to recruiting, because while fans speculate about the future, coaches still have work to do in the present. Relationships must be maintained. Prospects must be evaluated. Visits must be scheduled. Recruiting battles must be won. South Carolina appears focused on exactly that. The message coming from supporters is straightforward: ignore the noise. Focus on the results. And from their perspective, the results continue speaking loudly. Elite recruits remain interested. The program remains nationally relevant. The championship expectations remain unchanged. That confidence has created an interesting divide among basketball fans. One side believes the rumors themselves are proof of Staley's growing influence. The other side believes the rumors are distractions from what South Carolina is actually accomplishing. Neither side has definitive answers, but both sides are paying attention. That attention intensified recently because recruiting decisions often create ripple effects. One commitment can influence another. One recruiting victory can shift momentum. One announcement can completely change public perception. That is why supporters are watching this situation so closely. They understand that recruiting is rarely about one player. It is about the message a commitment sends. If South Carolina secures another highly regarded prospect, rival programs will notice. Future recruits will notice. The basketball world will notice. And perhaps most importantly, it would reinforce the idea that the foundation remains extremely strong. That possibility has many fans feeling optimistic. At the same time, others are urging caution. They point out that recruiting battles are unpredictable. Nothing is official until decisions are made. Prospects change directions. New programs enter the picture. Unexpected developments happen all the time. That uncertainty is exactly what keeps the story alive. Nobody knows the final outcome. Nobody knows where this recruitment ultimately ends. And nobody knows whether the speculation surrounding Dawn Staley eventually fades away or grows even louder. What everyone does know is that the spotlight continues getting brighter. Every week seems to bring another discussion, another theory, another debate, another headline. And as those conversations continue, one reality is becoming increasingly clear. South Carolina is operating from a position of strength. That strength is why expectations remain so high. That strength is why recruiting victories generate national attention. And that strength is why fans continue believing the program is prepared for whatever comes next. Whether that next chapter includes another major commitment, another championship pursuit, or an entirely unexpected twist remains to be seen. For now, the focus remains on the recruiting trail. The New York Guard remains one of the names generating excitement. Supporters continue monitoring every update. Rivals continue watching closely. And the basketball world continues wondering whether South Carolina is about to add another important piece to an already impressive future. Because if there is one lesson sports fans have learned over the years, it is this: the biggest stories rarely announce themselves in advance. They build quietly, one conversation at a time, one rumor at a time, one recruiting battle at a time. Then suddenly, everyone looks back and realizes they were witnessing the beginning of something much bigger. And judging by the amount of attention surrounding South Carolina right now, many fans believe that moment may be getting closer than anyone expected. What makes the situation even more intriguing is that the conversation has started moving beyond recruiting and into long-term strategy. The people following South Carolina closely are no longer asking only whether the Gamecocks can land another talented prospect. Many are asking what the program could look like 2, 3, or even 4 years from now. That is where the discussion becomes far more interesting, because every elite program eventually faces the same challenge. Success creates expectations. Expectations create pressure, and pressure forces programs to constantly evolve. South Carolina has managed that challenge better than almost anyone. While other programs have experienced ups and downs, the Gamecocks have consistently remained in the national spotlight. That consistency is not accidental. It is the result of recruiting, development, culture, and leadership all working together. Which brings us back to the name at the center of this entire story, Dawn Staley. For years, her greatest strength has not simply been winning games. It has been building an environment where players believe they can become the best version of themselves. That reputation matters on the recruiting trail. Young athletes pay attention to development. Families pay attention to stability. And when recruits evaluate programs, those factors often matter just as much as championships. That is why some fans believe South Carolina remains one of the most attractive destinations in the country regardless of outside speculation. The foundation is already established. The expectations are already clear. The track record already exists. From that perspective, recruiting momentum becomes easier to understand. Top players want opportunities. They want visibility. They want development. They want a chance to compete for championships. South Carolina checks every one of those boxes. That reality is one reason supporters remain confident despite the endless discussions happening online. However, there is another side to the story, the side involving competition. Because South Carolina is not recruiting in isolation. Every major program in the country is pursuing elite talent. Every major coach is making presentations. Every major school is offering a vision for the future. And that means recruiting victories are never guaranteed. Even when a program appears to have momentum, circumstances can change quickly. That uncertainty is exactly why the New York Guards recruitment has generated so much attention. Several programs are reportedly interested. Relationships continue developing. Evaluations continue taking place. Nothing has been finalized. Yet every update generates discussion because fans understand the potential significance. A commitment would be viewed as another statement, another indication that South Carolina remains a destination program for elite talent. And right now, statements matter. Because while recruiting battles continue, so do the conversations about the future of the sport itself. Women's basketball is experiencing unprecedented growth. Television audiences are increasing. Media coverage is expanding. Fan engagement is reaching new levels. The spotlight is larger than it has ever been before. That growth creates opportunities. It also creates new questions. Questions about leadership. Questions about influence. Questions about which figures will help shape the next era of basketball. That is one reason speculation involving Dawn Staley continues appearing across social media platforms. Some people believe influential leaders naturally attract bigger opportunities as the sport grows. Others believe her impact at South Carolina is already so significant that there is no reason to look elsewhere. Again, nothing is confirmed. There have been no official indications that a major change is approaching. But fans continue debating the possibility because influence often creates curiosity. And few people possess more influence within the game than Dawn Staley. What makes this fascinating is how calmly South Carolina appears to be operating through all of it. The program is not behaving like an organization facing uncertainty. At least from the outside, it appears focused on business as usual. Recruiting continues. Player development continues. Future planning continues. That observation has led some supporters to push back strongly against the rumors. Their argument is straightforward. If there were genuine concerns about the future, would South Carolina continue operating with this level of confidence? Would recruiting efforts remain this aggressive? Would expectations remain this high? Many fans think the answer is obvious. They believe the actions tell a clearer story than speculation ever could. Still, not everyone agrees. And that disagreement is what keeps the conversation alive. Sports fans love trying to predict the future. They search for clues. They analyze every detail. They connect dots that may or may not actually be connected. Sometimes those predictions prove accurate. Sometimes they completely miss the mark. Right now, nobody knows which category this situation falls into. What is clear is that South Carolina remains one of the most closely watched programs in the country. Every recruiting development becomes news. Every public appearance creates discussion. Every rumor generates reaction. And because of that attention, even routine events can suddenly feel significant. That is exactly where things stand today. The recruitment remains unresolved. The speculation remains unconfirmed. The debates remain active. But beneath all the noise, one fact continues standing out. South Carolina remains in a position of strength. The program continues attracting attention from talented prospects. The culture continues earning praise. The expectations remain championship level. And perhaps most importantly, there is no indication that the Gamecocks plan on lowering their ambitions anytime soon. If anything, the opposite appears true. The program seems determined to continue pushing forward, which means the next development could be extremely important. Because if South Carolina secures another major recruiting win, many fans will view it as confirmation that the machine keeps moving exactly as intended. And if that happens while speculation continues swirling around Dawn Staley's future, the conversation could become even louder than it is today. Not because anyone has answers, but because the biggest questions in sports are often the ones that keep people watching. And right now, South Carolina has everyone's attention. And now the question goes to you. What do you think is really happening behind the scenes at South Carolina? Is this simply another example of Dawn Staley doing what she has always done? Building for the future, recruiting elite talent, and keeping the Gamecocks at the top of women's basketball? Or do you think the growing speculation means something bigger could eventually be on the horizon? Remember, nothing has been confirmed. The NBA conversations remain exactly that, conversations. But as we've seen throughout sports history, sometimes the biggest stories start as whispers before they become headlines. As for the talented four-star guard from New York, her recruitment is still unfolding. No final decision has been announced, which means this story is far from over. And if there is one thing we've learned, it's that South Carolina rarely stays out of the spotlight for long. Now I want to hear from you. Should Dawn Staley stay at South Carolina for the rest of her coaching career? Or if an NBA opportunity ever became available, would you like to see her take on that challenge? Drop your thoughts in the comments below because this debate is only getting started. If you enjoyed today's breakdown, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest women's basketball news, recruiting updates, and the biggest stories shaping the game. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the next headline arrives when nobody is expecting it. We'll be watching this one very closely.